All right, so we're going to make a right up here onto Strawberry Hill Road.
Got it? Okay. Now, West Windsor is a quiet section of central Vermont.
That it is.
I mean, it's small town New England at its finest.
So true. Okay, so we're going to head up here just a little bit. And, all right, yeah, pull over right over here by the side of the road.
Okay. Now, what are we looking for?
We're looking for a grave, Ray. And not just any grave, a mausoleum.
Well, why are we in the woods? We passed the Brownsville Cemetery just about a mile back there.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a 1960s and 70s icon buried in there, but more on him later.
Okay.
The site we're looking for is just a short hike into the woods. So the person we're looking for is too good to be buried with the common folk down below. We're looking for the grave of an eccentric. Some would say a snob, a local poet named Daniel Cady. Hey, I'm Jeff Belanger. Welcome to episode 371 of the New England Legends podcast.
And I'm Ray Auger. Thank you for joining us on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England, one story at a time. We're always on the hunt for ghosts, monsters, aliens, roadside oddities, and all the other wicked, strange things that make New England like no other place. We get most of our story leads from you, so please reach out to us anytime through our website. We love hearing from you.
We'll go looking for this mausoleum madness right after this word from our sponsor.
Why would somebody want to be buried way out here in the woods?
It's a good question. So first, a century ago, this wasn't woods. It was a grassy hilltop called Strawberry Hill that overlooked town.
Got it. All right, here's a little bit more background on West Windsor, Vermont. As we said, it's a small town. The population was just over 1,300 at the last census. The town was established in 1761 and consisted mostly of small farms. Those farms began to flourish in the early 1800s as merino sheep were brought into the region. The sheep did well and the farms grew. It was never a bustling city, though, but always had a quaint charm to it.
A quaint town that inspired people like poet Daniel Cady. A town that drew others to the region in more modern times, people who fell in love with the area to the point of wishing, upon their death, to be buried here.
Right.
Okay, I see our destination just up ahead.
All right, I see a small clearing. There's a stone mausoleum in the middle with 4 stone columns in the front. It looks almost like a mini Supreme Court building.
Yeah, kind of.
There's a black metal railing around the whole structure. The clearing isn't very large, though.
No, but the ego of the guy inside was. Daniel Cady was born here in West Windsor in 1861. From his childhood until he was 19 years old, he worked on a farm earning $18 per month. After that, he decided to go to the University of Vermont. He said of the move, and I quote, "I've been giving my hands a chance till they're sore. Now I'm going to give my head a chance and see which will be the sorest."
That's a good line.
I know, right?
After graduating college, Cady passed the bar, became a lawyer, and moved to New York City, where he practiced law for 20 years. He retired from law in the year 1911 and returned to Vermont, where he met and wooed the recently widowed Mary Wells.
Now, Wells was wealthy. The two bought a house in Burlington said to be worth over $1 million at the time. With access to all that money, Cady could live in the lap of luxury, travel the world on a 5-star budget, and pursue his love of writing poetry.
Being a learned and wealthy man, Cady earned the reputation of being a snob. But few could argue about his poetry. People liked it. Though he was an aristocrat, his poetry felt folksy.
So let's head back to the year 1934 and meet Daniel Cady.
It's March of 1934. FDR is in the White House, and America is struggling with the Great Depression. The economy isn't doing well, but Americans are resilient, and FDR seems determined to lead us out of this financial quagmire.
Here in West Windsor, Vermont, folks are feeling the pinch as well. Money's short for many, but they press on because there's no other choice.
Money is not short for poet Daniel Cady. For the last 23 years, he's been enjoying his wife's wealth and writing hundreds of poems, enough to fill 6 books. He writes about things in Vermont people know about, like this one entitled Vermont Dried Beef. Go ahead and give these lines a read, Jeff.
Okay. It says, to turn the trick without default, you take a quart of rocky salt. 2 spoons of salted peter, mind, you get the skull and crossbones kind. Okay, so the guy writes about things he likes to eat. I mean, among other things.
Yeah, if you put a recipe in a poem, folks might remember it better.
That's very true. So his most popular book is Rhymes of Rural Vermont Life. Came out in 1919 and featured 114 mentions of Vermont locations and items. The book sold 1,000 copies in the first 2 weeks of publication alone.
Cady is also passionate about education and literacy. He gives impassioned speeches to school and town boards, encouraging them to put more funds towards reading programs and literacy classes.
He's a popular guy, a local celebrity. For his fans, Cady embodies Vermont and New England life. And some of that fame has frankly gone to his head.
How so?
Okay, so, well, he received honorary awards from Norwich University and the University of Vermont for his poetry. And since then, he's taken to calling himself Dr. Cady, even though he has no doctorate.
Got it.
Now 73 years old, Cady is thinking about his next chapter, his final chapter. He wants a final resting place worthy of his achievements and stature. And that's when he sets his sights on this pasture of a West Windsor farm where he spent his boyhood. The hilltop sits about 1,000 feet in elevation with a spectacular view of the town below and a Scutney Mountain just across the valley.
Cady spares no expense. The outside of the mausoleum is made of Woodbury granite, while the sarcophagus inside is made of a Scutney green granite and modeled after Napoleon's sarcophagus in France. The whole project costs him a whopping $38,000 to complete.
And once the mausoleum is completed, Cady writes in a letter to his friend, quote, "People will have to look up to me whether they want to or not."
Yeah, he's obviously full of himself.
Clearly. It's April 1st when Cady draws his last breath. His body is laid into his costly mausoleum where the world below can see him. But the mausoleum alone isn't enough. Alongside his mausoleum, he left a plaque embossed in bronze. Go ahead and give it a read, Ray.
All right. Let's see. In hoc sepulchro parvum sed apt. I can't read this.
The whole thing's in Latin, except these last two lines.
The last two lines say, "If thou dost read the Latin language, stay. If mute, return on some more scholared day." So I guess we have to come back after we learn some Latin.
I think that's his message. And that brings us back to today.
Well, it's been 90 years since we read that plaque by the mausoleum, and we still don't know Latin, Jeff.
We still don't. By the way, the $38,000 price tag for the mausoleum would be over $500,000 in today's money. And though the man may have been a rich snob, his work was loved by many, and he's still honored up in these parts with his own Daniel Cady Day.
Either way, he was memorable. Even if a forest grew up around his final resting place and ruined his view.
Or ruined the town's view of him, depending on who you ask. Okay, so I think we should head down the hill and swing by Brownsville Cemetery, just around the corner.
Well, this is a pretty cemetery right off the side of the road. This is where we'll find the 1960s and 70s icon buried?
Yep, we will. We'll find him right here on the northern edge of the cemetery property. And though he wasn't born here, and he didn't even die in town, upon his death, his wish was to be buried in West Windsor, Vermont, where he and his wife had a vacation home in a local farmhouse.
All right, any hint as to who it is?
Well, he's an actor.
Okay.
And if he ever got out of his grave, it would be a great escape.
Okay.
And here he is, right by that bench.
Oh, no way. Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson, I know.
I get it now. Death Wish, Great Escape, two of his biggest movies.
Right. He and his wife had a place in town, and they wanted to be buried here. And though Charles Bronson was a big name in Hollywood and all over the world, he's here in Brownsville Cemetery with all the common folk, who forever have to look 1,000 feet up Strawberry Hill to see the resting place of Vermont's eccentric and snobby poet laureate, Daniel Cady.
And that takes us to After the Legend, where we dig deeper into this week's story and sometimes veer off course.
After the Legend's brought to you by our mighty, mighty Patreon patrons. This is the way the media works today, friends. We prefer to work for you compared to a network. The more patrons, the more we can offer. So we're asking for just $3 per month. And for that, you get early ad-free access to new episodes. You'll get our entire archive of shows, discounts on merch, plus bonus material and content that no one else gets to hear. Please head to patreon.com/New England Legends to sign up, or click on the Patreon link in the episode description. And if you want to see some pictures of Daniel Cady's mausoleum and the man himself, click on the link in our episode description, or go to our website and click on episode 371.
I like how we cite so many kind words about him from him, but not anybody else really.
Right.
I think they all tolerated him, liked his poetry,
Yeah.
but I think he looked up to himself a little bit more than others did.
So I don't know if you know anyone who's nouveau riche. The French have a term for it, right?
Okay, what's that?
New money.
Oh, yeah.
It means like you weren't born rich,
Sure.
but you acquired a great deal of wealth later in life. And
Acquired, not earned. Acquired.
well, you could have earned it. I mean,
But I find that to be different, though. If you earn your money after coming from small beginnings.
what if you hit the lottery?
Well, that's not earning your money.
Well, right. But so, or like you got lucky in business and you got in at the right time and you
Yeah,
made a
but at least
fortune.
you worked. I think
Sure.
if you just found money by marrying into it,
Married
it's a
into
little
it.
different.
So I've known old money. I once knew a guy, and I'm not going to say his name because it doesn't matter anyway. But he owns. Well, his dad started a number of car dealerships.
Okay.
and he inherited them. And
Okay.
and
I
so
have no idea who you're talking about.
yeah, I know. Those who know, and it doesn't matter. Perfectly nice
for
guy.
him.
Yeah, he's into the paranormal, and he was telling
I
me
didn't know
once.
that.
Yeah, so I was talking to him once, and he said, he's like, "Oh, what's one of your favorite haunts?" I was like, "Oh, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky." He goes, well, "We could go. I have a plane." And someone pulled me aside, and he goes, "He doesn't have a plane. He has
got
he
jet.
has a G5. Like
Yeah.
that's a limousine with
yeah.
wings.
Yeah.
Right. And I went, "Oh," I said, "Well,
Did you take him up on it?
They serve shrimp scampi on that, right? Like that's I said,
What's the in-flight movie?
yeah,
Something scary?
He gave me his number, and I said, "Well, shoot, I would go in a heartbeat. Let me know."
Well,
So,
now that you told me the story, I have to go with you.
Yeah, sure,
Mind you,
of course.
This could be an episode of
Right.
New England Legends.
my point is, he's old money. He
Yeah.
was born into it. He knows nothing else. He's not rude. When he's out of touch, when he says things like, "Oh, well, we could just take my plane to,
That's what he's
to
used to.
Louisville," it's
Yeah.
just normal to him. It'd be like me saying, "Like, hey, I'm cooking burgers today. You want one?"
Sure.
Right? You're just like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, throw one on for me."
Yeah.
Right? Like that's just normal to him. However, new money people have to tell you like what things cost.
Oh, yeah,
So like,
right.
yeah. Oh, this is my new $80,000 watch. And
Because
I'm like,
they learned just before you learned
Right.
how much it costs.
yeah, and I'm just like, you could have just said, "This is my new watch."
Right.
Old money would say, "This is my watch," and they probably wouldn't spend $80,000 on a watch.
No,
They-
that's the standard.
yeah, but but I'm just saying that they
Old money.
They know how to keep their money, right? They don't waste it on like when a
I see where you're
when
going with that.
$100
Yeah.
watch would do just fine.
Sure.
Someone else has to be like, "Oh, that painting is an actual Rembrandt. It cost 1.2 million," and you're just like, "I didn't ask."
Which I always found the case to be for anybody that spends a lot of money on anything.
Yeah.
The only value that's on it is if you tell somebody what the value is. Otherwise, there's no value to it.
Well,
somebody
right.
walking around with an expensive purse, it's like, oh, that's a nice purse. You get it at Walmart. No, this is a $10,000 purse. Kate Spade.
Oh.
Got it. It's a limited edition.
Excuse me.
See, so you have to endure that conversation with somebody.
Yeah. Instead of just like, nice black bag.
That's
Like,
it, yeah.
I have one just like it from Target.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, except you spent 10 grand and I spent 30.
Right.
Yeah,
we've known rich people before, and
Yeah.
the only way to put a real value on something is to tell the poor people what you spent on it.
So my point is, he's new money. This guy Cady, right?
Yeah,
Daniel
yeah.
Cady. And so he married into it, and then like, look, I don't want to disparage any writers, but like, boy, oh boy, would it be nice to be married to someone super rich, right? And then you could be like, I think I'm gonna write an album.
Yeah, right. You have all the time in the world
Yeah.
to do it. Going back to that gentleman,
Yeah.
he spent a lot of time playing with some very famous musicians in New England.
He did.
Put his own band. He didn't even call it the other band with
No.
the other guys.
Yeah,
He made
that's-
up his own band
that's the guy.
and just brought in a whole bunch of guys from a very famous New England band, or
Very famous.
nationally and worldly famous.
Yeah.
But based out of New England.
And then it occurred to me, like, I imagine, like, oh man, we got paid $1,000 for the gig tonight, which means I only lost 20 grand, right? Because he has to pay those guys what they're worth,
Right, exactly.
not what the gig pays.
I don't think anybody tried out for that band.
No.
I'm sure he didn't try out for the band. It was just
Purchased
one of those
people.
like, just
Yeah.
give you some money and we'll do this. Which is, I wish I had that kind of money.
Of course.
I'd bring in, I was going to say Eddie Van Halen. Rest in peace.
No,
but
you wouldn't.
If
Well,
I had enough money, maybe I could though.
reanimate him.
Yeah.
So I know. No. So I would struggle with it. So like if I hit the lottery, which I think is a better analogy, right? Suddenly you have millions, and you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and of course there are people that are like, I wish I could just like write an album, and if you have millions in the bank because you hit the lottery, then you could take a year and it could sell 50 copies and
Sure.
you could be happy,
Absolutely.
right?
Because
But-
you did it.
But that feels empty to me. Like, what's better is you still got to grind out the job. You still got to like take care of all the house chores and everything else, and you still make time for that art.
Right.
And if that sells 50 copies, like it just feels better to me.
Yeah, because that's your path. All your books have sold like 50 copies each time you write one.
Yeah,
so
that's why I got to write so many. 50 times 50, and suddenly you've sold a bunch of books.
Right.
You know. So no, but that's the thing about art, right? Is that you suffer for it, and if you don't have to suffer, is the art good?
Right.
And,
well, yeah, I see that.
And you could probably point out like musicians that hit it big, you know, with an album that speaks to the every person, and then they hit it big, and they're just like they can't relate anymore.
Right.
They're like, yeah, you know, when your chauffeur's running late and you're just like furious. I'm like, no, we don't know what that's like.
I mean, I think I'm giving away way too much here by saying this, but there was a disc jockey. I think he's still working out there. But
what's a disc jockey?
I know, it's so old. Anyway, radio personality.
Got it.
Who started as the everyman.
Yeah.
Right. And then met a certain somebody who we may have mentioned already or not.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he's jetting around, going to the Super Bowl, going to the Grammys, going here, going there with famous comedians by his side. And then all of a sudden he wasn't relating to the everyday man anymore.
Well, that's the thing, right? If you lose your grip on the regular people. But I mean, to Daniel Cady's credit, you know, he wrote poems about in simple language too. It was not like overly flowery.
Sure.
So people liked him. So the locals related to him. He's one of us.
He was writing about Vermont,
even though he was like a well-educated lawyer who married a millionaire.
Yeah. I wonder if that choice was made to sell books, or just because he wanted to relate to the folks around him. Because he sounds very egotistical, where he would want to be flowery and wordy and ununderstandable.
Yeah.
Is that a word? Ununderstandable?
Relatable, I guess. There's an expression I heard, because I know some people in TV, and someone told me long ago, like, don't ever believe your own legend, right? Because there is a legend of a person, like
Sure.
especially once someone becomes any level of fame,
Yeah.
where you're just like, wow, like that person's a big deal, but they're still a person, but when they start believing it, the house of cards falls.
Yeah.
Right. If they're just like, no, I'm just working. If you're impressed by me, that's great, but
Right.
I'm just working. I'm doing what I love to do, and that's that.
I would say some of my favorite actors are like that. When you hear them in interviews,
Yeah.
or musicians or actors, and then
course.
they're like,
Artists.
I took my kid to a soccer game the other day.
Yeah.
I coached. And that makes them more relatable. And you're like, oh, I like this person
Right.
a lot. But when they're up higher than everybody else, my nanny takes the kids here and there. And
You don't relate.
you
So-
can't relate, right? So I think that's the right way to go.
So here's the thing. The good news is we're struggling artists, and if we ever do hit the lottery, then we'll have to take classes on being humble, which would be great. I would like to have that problem. I'd like to be like, oh, I really got to work on my humility.
Yeah. I just want the chance to make that decision
Right.
on my
to be
own.
like, yeah, I woke up at noon today and, wrote a poem.
I'm kind of doing the same thing right now, but I'm out of work. That's a different than
between
being
jobs.
Yes, yeah.
Which we'll make a big announcement when we're ready. When
Yeah.
you're ready, we'll.
Oh, we can go whenever, but not here.
No, not now.
This is not the right place.
Not
or
until
time.
it's ready.
Okay.
I think that's important.
All right.
When you can consume it today.
That's when you want to talk about it?
That's when we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it. So anyway, new money, old money, a guy in a mausoleum up on a hill. But that is funny to me, right? Like, I want to be buried 1,000 feet up away from everybody. So now granted, a forest has grown in
Sure.
the last 100 years. You can't see it.
Yeah.
You need to literally follow a trail through the woods to find this place. So his majestic view and the view up on the hill, like, what is that little structure way
Yeah.
up there? It's all gone now.
He didn't take that into consideration? Put some money aside for landscaping?
If you see a big open field, you don't assume a forest is going to grow there.
I guess.
But it did. That's what trees do. You know, they start filling in. But so the irony is that it's sort of lost, if not for a story. A story you'd have to know, because you can't just see it on the hill anymore. And that's why we're here.
Please like, share, subscribe, and review our podcast. We count on you to grow, so share if you can. The more people who listen and share, the more story leads that come in. You should also check out our New England Legends Facebook group with over 10,000 strong. Members are always sharing weirdness in there. And also reach out to us anytime through our website. We love hearing from you.
We'd like to thank our sponsors. Thank you to our Patreon patrons, and our theme music is, of course, by John Judd.
Until next time, remember,
The bazaar is closer than you think.